Mike Dawson. Here we are in Kabul, Afghanistan. Who are you? What are you doing here?
Who am I?
Who are you?
What am I doing here? That I ask myself a fair bit. I'm Mike. I'm the CEO of Soon, which is an IT company that I've run the last 5 years. And Soon is an IT company that works to change IT in a way that makes it more useful in Afghanistan.
And what is your background? You're a dropout, you said.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's how you get into the IT business if you're serious about it. I did IT and programming work starting about 12 years ago. I started coding. Then I got bored of coding, and I got into like social care work, drug and alcohol rehabilitation, learning disabilities. Then I got bored of that too, and I went to business school. And then I got this placement, and then I stayed out here more or less.
What brought you here to Kabul?
Making a typing error on an email application.
It can't be that easy.
It wasn't quite that straightforward, no. I made a typo error. I sent an application form to the wrong place for the summer application, so I had to look for somewhere different. And I heard that this organization that I was doing student internships with, ISEC, was trying to start in Afghanistan. So everybody said, well, Afghanistan and Iraq, they're the same thing. It's all extremely dangerous. And then I looked at the topic and was like, well, Afghanistan actually is not that dangerous. You know, it's like there's like 20, 30 people being killed a day in Baghdad, and like 1 or 2 in every few months in Kabul. Okay, it's not that bad. Let's try that. And then I found people were quite friendly, quite receptive to new ideas. There was really sort of a blank slate, so it was a perfect opportunity, really.
Yeah, so you've been here now for 5 years.
5 years, yeah.
What has changed?
What has changed here?
Changed?
Good question. Obviously a lot has changed here, and a lot changes extremely quickly. Say like a lot of stuff has gotten more liberal, particularly in Kabul. A lot of the social taboos are sort of becoming less important.
Okay.
Obviously there's a lot of building work and infrastructure getting revamped. 3 years ago the power was revolutionized. It was like 4 hours a day, or 4 hours in 3 or 4 days during the winter, and then all of a sudden one night 3 years ago it switched over to being 24/7 almost. So that's a pretty big improvement. The roads have been fixed up a lot in the last year.
And regarding security, did you ever run into
trouble? Couple times, got a bit close. Once I nearly got in trouble on the road back from Jalalabad. I got a new car and there was gunk in the radiator, so it overheated and stopped in an area with no phone coverage as it was getting dark in an area run by the Taliban overnight. That wasn't so good.
So how did you get out of it?
I got out the car. I was with an Afghan colleague. I sort of hid it away a little bit. And I saw a guy with his family. I got a ride, hitchhiked to the police station, spoke with the police. I explained my conundrum. They called an American Army translator. The American Army said, okay, fine, you can come and stay with us. We can't help you with your car. We'll give you a safe place to stay. I was like, okay, fine, great. Got over there, it was like 11 o'clock at night, stood in front of the gate, had a gun pointed in my face, shining flashlight, hands in the air, 15 minutes of interview. What are you doing? I'm an IT guy, was at a school in Jalalabad. Like, why don't you go back to Jalalabad? There could be illegal Taliban checkpoints. I had to get a friend of mine to call a taxi, and he eventually made it back to Jalalabad around midnight. Thankfully no checkpoints that night.
Lucky you.
Yeah.
So coming back...
Lesson learned.
Lesson learned. Never happened again.
Never happened again. We just... Well, 2 mistakes we made. One is we didn't have enough time left over in case something went wrong. We should never have left. Just to remind us of where we are. sometimes I gotta learn. Depends. Where were we?
Lesson learned.
Lesson learned. Never voyage out except for in the morning, so that you have plenty of time to deal with it during daylight hours if something does go wrong. And bring all the phone SIM cards you can, in case one network has coverage.
That's a good tip.
Yeah.
So coming back to our topic, education.
Yeah.
What are the biggest challenges you see in Afghanistan in the field of education?
I think
Without
the biggest.
saying all is a mess.
I wasn't going to say that. Well, I mean, education was one of the things that changed a lot over the last years. If you look at since 2001, like now, there's like tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of kids in school. Now it's millions, including girls. So actually, education has been one of the success story sectors, relatively speaking. Biggest problem is probably teacher capacity, both quantity and quality. There's still, I think, just under half of the kids in Afghanistan not in school, period. Growing up illiterate.
Half of them.
Half of them, prox. I mean, who knows what...
Yeah.
There's lies, damn lies, statistics, and then there's statistics in Afghanistan. So, you don't have enough time in school, you have 2.5 hours of school day, barely half the year. The teachers are overwhelmed, they can't check homework. The learning style is often rote learning dominated. A lot of teachers simply won't allow kids to ask questions. There's subject matter knowledge problems, pedagogy issues, and then everybody runs around making workshops about all these brilliant new interactive pedagogies and how to do it. And like, well, that's great, but you ain't got the time. You have this huge book, you're bearing down the teachers to get through this huge book, and they barely got the time to get through reading the book, never mind doing anything with it.
So where do you start if you want to help?
Depends on what one's objectives are. I mean, obviously there's great swathes of the country without schools, and a start there would be just to build schools and get teachers there. Another would be to look for ways that you can improve the quality of what's going on at the moment, and I guess that's where we are.
Okay. What kind of projects are you working in? Are you involved with? And are you only you're based here in Kabul, but you work, as you told us yesterday, also in kind of
various places. Right now I'm involved in one laptop per child. So the idea there is to use interactive curriculum materials on the laptop to effectively double time for learning. Provide feedback. It's not as good as having a teacher with enough time and resources and skills, but it's a lot better than not having your homework checked. So that's what we're looking at, and we're looking at researching how effective that is.
So when did you first introduce the one laptop per child?
The project formally started, what was it? 2009,
So you do
October.
have some experience with it. What kind of results did come out? And how did you use it? What was the specific area or?
I think the biggest result, I mean, it was a pilot, so the biggest result for us was to try and figure out, can this be useful, and if so, how? And that was how we started getting into the problems I sort of was talking about earlier. Excuse me 1 second, let's see, this is emergency. I think what we could say is that the teachers do come around to the idea, because that was one of the big fears at the beginning, was teacher resistance. And teachers do see the potential in it. They do need more training and reassurance than one might bargain for. Students take to it like a duck to water. The big thing that changed for us is at the beginning we thought, okay, we have this great laptop, and it will foment creativity, and will provide digital libraries in the school, and hey presto, there's going to be a revolution. And said revolution didn't come. So then we're scratching our heads trying to figure out, hey, you know, we put thousands of web pages in this system, we've put in all these you know, educational Dari and Pashto software, we've localized the whole thing, what's wrong? And that's when we started digging back to say, and that's when we sort of came across, okay, the problem is time, the problem is feedback, and then we started looking at it, okay, forget technology as like a magic ingredient that you throw in. Look at how the technology changes the constituents of an effective education as we know it. And if you look at various reports, say, okay, you have to have a curriculum, fine. You have to have a time on task, fine. You have to have feedback. You have to have access to resources, and actually the time and feedback were actually amongst the most important. That's been confirmed, like research since the 80s. So it's forgetting any idea that technology and kids are like magic. They're not. It's the application of the technology that counts. And that's when we came up with the interactive book model, and we started producing those.
What is it precisely?
The interactive book model is where we take the curriculum text that they're studying right now, and we interweave interactive exercises, questions, games, matching games, little video, sound, whatever else into the curriculum. So that creates like a blended learning model where you have half your time at school with said resources and half your time at home with a laptop for self-study.
So it is an advantage if the kids can take their laptop at home, or does it cause any problems?
It's both, but it's a prerequisite for the program to be essential, because if you're saying that you want to use the program to effectively increase the time for learning, then there's not the time in the school, so if the kid doesn't take the laptop home,
there's no chance.
There's no chance, there's no point. It definitely creates a security hazard of some kind, and we tell kids, you know, put it in a bag, put it in your backpack, don't let people see it too much. There's not that many incidents of laptops going missing on the way back home that I know of, but they'd better be safe rather than sorry.
Yeah. What other projects are you involved in besides the OLPC?
Besides OLPC,
or what are you working on?
We're working on a bandwidth management solution that's called NetSpeed Manager. So here the internet is insanely expensive. It's like $3,000 per megabit per second per month.
Hopla, $3,000
US is the cost of satellite bandwidth.
Repeat this slowly.
$3,000 US per megabit per second per month of dedicated bandwidth.
Wow.
That's expensive.
Yeah.
So that's expensive anywhere, and then compare it to costs here, and you know, one gets an idea how pricey it is. And of course, with the work ethic is as it is, and same as in other countries, I mean, the first thing you have to do when you're connected to the internet is open up Facebook, check out those YouTube videos, etc. And it only takes, with that amount of bandwidth, 1 or 2 people to go on YouTube to really kill the system for everyone. So what NetSpeed Manager does is it restricts stuff on a per user basis. So it holds users accountable for their usage of a shared resource. It also has like a peak off-peak model. So if you download a bunch of stuff at night, I don't care. If you download it at 9 o'clock in the morning, it's a problem. So it counts usage during the day at a much higher rate than usage during the evening. And then it has a tool by which if you want to download something, you can just ask a server, copy-paste the address, and it will download it for you in the middle of the night. You come back the next morning, it's sitting there on the shared drive. Done.
Yeah, okay.
So it shifts the usage to be off-peak to make more effective use of a connection. It's one thing we're looking at.
You are dealing also with a lot of NGOs, of course, here in Kabul, and also with ministries. How is the work there? You don't have grey hair yet, but you lost some.
Yeah, working.
What is your experience, or what could you give if you would have to give an advice on this?
If I'd have to give an advice on how to work with organizations here, don't underestimate the time and effort that it takes simply to coordinate and keep people happy. That was the biggest mistake we made by far.
In which way?
To communicate when you have sometimes a language and understanding barrier. The phones are often not that effective. Understanding of written English is not always perfect. So it means more face-to-face meetings are required. More face-to-face meetings are generally expected. It's a very time-intensive thing just to coordinate with people, bring people on board, keep people informed of what they need to know. And when you're planning something, you have to have someone with dedicated time just for that job.
Okay.
Just to call people, meet people, drink tea, talk about the issues, get their opinions, think about them, think about how to make them happy. That's a really vital thing. And don't overestimate how quickly things will go.
In your company, you were saying yesterday, when I remember right, that you mostly work with locals.
But yes.
How well are they educated? What do you have to do that they do understand? I mean, you kind of nerd. And I mean this in a very positive way, so don't get me wrong here, but how is this working? Where do you have to invest, or where do you have to?
I think you don't do anybody any favors when you overestimate or underestimate people's capacities. So the first thing to do is try and understand their capacity and then design the job in a way that fits their capacity. So that's why we use a lot of templating systems. And the other thing, you can't overestimate how long people will hang around for. People are mobile. They move pretty quickly sometimes.
Okay.
So if you make job descriptions that require 1 or 2 years to get up to speed, well, it'll never work. They'll be out the door before they can actually be productive. So one part is like designing the job, the way that matches their capacity. Another part is often to split jobs up. So, okay, I'm not going to find someone who knows A, B, and C, but if I have someone who knows A, somebody who knows B, someone who knows C, and they pass it from one to the other, like a sort of a factory chain, that can work.
Okay.
It's almost like how the communist government worked here. It's very much like that. Somebody had this form, somebody had that form, somebody had the other form, and it went from A to B to C. The person who did A couldn't do C, the person who did C couldn't do B, but the whole system together worked.
And so is the company.
So the company is very much structured like that.
And you are growing kind of rapidly, aren't you? That's what you were saying yesterday.
We're growing pretty rapidly. We sort of sometimes we grow, and sometimes a few projects go down, and then we get more. But overall, it's growing, and that's certainly one of the challenges, is to manage it as it grows in a place. Because when we started, we had 4 people in the office.
Now you're 30.
Now we have 30.
And what are your clients?
Our clients are often U.S. government or companies here or NGOs. Sometimes the military, sometimes USAID, sometimes USAID contractors. Military are definitely very different to work with normally. In a lot of ways, a lot easier to work with, I would say.
Okay.
Because the military is not looking for guaranteed success. They're looking to hedge their bets. And they're not looking to wait around.
Okay.
They're looking to get something moving in a time frame that matters, because they know that time is everything to them. They have a limited amount of time period. So they'd rather do 95% now than 100% a year later. And sometimes the old development mindset is very much 100% 2 years later. It's like, you see this with a lot of, you see this with a lot of organizations that they, you spend a year making a 5-year plan, but at the end of a year, everything's changed, and your 5-year plan can just go to the garbage bin.
Yesterday we were talking about this great idea project. Do you think, coming back to education, this will almost be also my last question, what kind of role can mobile devices play here in the Afghanian, or you say Afghanian or Afghan education?
Afghan
education system?
I think that very much remains to be seen. Certainly quizzes and feedback by SMS is certainly a possibility, because missing feedback is definitely a problem. So that would seem to be a strong contender. Possibly transporting media, because mobile phones are, after all, the computers that most people have. Right. They're the cheapest way to move media around. We're looking at how we can connect our sort of content systems with exporting onto, you know, like low-cost phones. So certainly running basically computer programs on the phone, because you see some of it's been done, but not too much. It's also definitely a possibility. I think it's very much remains to be seen over the next year, and I think that's why any technology that's going out has to have a very heavy research component attached to it. Okay. And that has to include both qualitative research, focus groups, asking people how they see things, how they see their problems, as well as having the focus groups and asking people how they see it. One has to have yourself a very strong knowledge of the reality on the ground, because of course one thing will be said, yeah, we're checking all the homeworks, great. How much time? 10 minutes for 50 students, 12.5 seconds per student. Really? You have to know the reality, because it would be described in a totally different way to the reality. So what's classic is researchers come in, just first time here, oh, we found everything out, fantastic, write the paper. It's like, well, if you look under the surface, half of this stuff isn't like that. So you have to really know what's going on the ground and have a very good sort of gut feeling for stuff. And then you have to have the quantitative research, because I would strongly argue that any technological intervention has to be judged value for money against other interventions that could be made. If you're spending $20 on technology, that's $20 you might not be spending on teacher training at the end of the day.
Which is the very first thing actually we should need to get better.
Well, obviously that needs to get better. The question is where you put your money at what time, and where you put the resources at what time, because if I can't improve the teaching standards realistically for the next 5 years, what am I doing now that's going to make sure that the kids who are coming out of 4th grade can read? So you cannot skimp on teacher training, but you also can't say that's the only thing. We're just going to train the teachers and everything will be fine. It won't.
Do you have some kind of overview? I mean, here in Kabul, it seems that everything is a little bit better than in rural areas. Is it like this? And how does the school look like in rural areas, if there is one? I mean, we've been to Power, but this is not really a rural area.
I haven't really been to really rural schools yet either. And one lesson we learned is bite off what you can chew, and you know, we're still chewing the semi-rural areas. I mean, when I was in Paktika, unfortunately I didn't actually get to go to the school, because to do so would require a military convoy. I mean, generally, the buildings, they're standardized designs. They look the same everywhere. I've been to a couple just checking them out briefly. It's the teachers and the difference in the teachers' experience levels and knowledge levels. That's the real difference. Also, the gender balance in rural areas, particularly conservative rural areas. I mean,
No girls at all.
No girls at all. Not necessarily because they don't want to send their girls to school, but because they're too afraid of what might happen, because girls' schools are often the first thing to get targeted in those sorts of areas. Bunches of girls going to school. I mean, like, there's been motorcycle acid attacks, AK-47 attacks, IEDs next to girls' schools. And it's pretty nasty.
You said a very surprising thing yesterday, that women are in military.
Yeah.
This almost freaked me out. Is this true, or were you joking?
No, this is true. There are
Afghan
female members of the Afghan National Army, and as far as I know, they're mostly in logistic battalions. They are armed, they have uniforms, they go through military training. There's female police officers who I don't think are armed normally, who deal with family issues, who deal with normal issues, who deal with other police duties. Yeah, it's going on.
What's next here? This is the very last thing. What do you expect next here?
I don't know. I expect to see a lot of changes as international presence draws down.
In which ways? Yeah?
I think the military drawdown will start to happen. Security could temporarily get a lot worse. If it's done wrong, it could be civil war. I don't know what will, and it could be also like funding streams could start drying up, because a lot of the funding streams are justified for strategic reasons, that we'll put this much money into Afghanistan because our troops are here. That reason will go away. There's budget crises back home, and money will start to dry up.
Why are you building a company here?
Because I think it's just something more sustainable. Because we look to do things which are cost effective, and because I see doing that in a private company, it gives you much more flexibility to reinvest, to change your mind, to do other stuff, to look into new avenues that you would not get in an NGO. Also, NGOs have extremely uncertain legal status here. And sometimes quite a bit of resentment as well. Like, technically anything that belongs to an NGO actually belongs to the Afghan government, not the NGO.
So, thanks a lot for your time, Mike.
My pleasure, thank you.